Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily spiritual podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kastubadas. Welcome to the show. This is episode 1408. Good morning. Here live with Henry, Catherine A., Bhakti Udi. Got Bali and Dunya and their kids around here somewhere. And people are starting to trickle in for the chant camp celebration. Looking forward to that. Here live with Miss Mara spinning the dials, who's getting some of my. Got a new tea I drink every morning.
T-I?
Iced, not ice, just cold. A new tea I drink. I got a new tea I drink.
Gotcha. I thought you said I have a new tea I drink. That's like
a new tea I drink. Oh, you should try it. It's like an AI drink, but better. It's a tea I drink. That's like saffron. I learned it from the Persians.
Oh, it's a little saffron in there.
A little saffron tea, yeah. Releases all the dopamine. Well, that's why I'm so happy.
Oh, you have been. I think this tea may be a problem. Like yesterday, you almost completely collapsed on the show. Mara, you and I are gonna have to talk. You're all hyped up. I can see it.
Oh my God, I almost died yesterday.
Okay.
But I'm a little tired today because I stayed up till midnight, 12:15 actually, waiting. My son went with his friends to the fair. I missed the smash up demolition derby last night, and my son went with his friends, but they didn't get home till like midnight. So I waited up for him. Thank you,
You're
man.
worried. You're concerned.
Well, you know, he is 10. I'm just trying to make sure he gets home. I have to be somewhat of a reasonable dad. The kid plays with axes and fire and rides a mini bike around the lawn. I got to have some that, I let him go to Florida and fly Namamrita's flying machine. Like that could have got me arrested.
Okay.
I was like, is there a parachute on that thing? He's like, no. It was almost like, what was that like child show? Was that Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the flying car? It was sort of like letting your kid go up in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Anyway, how are you?
I'm doing okay, Raghunath. Doing okay.
Miss Mara is just like serving endlessly. When people start to show up, she's just like
burritos.
Great.
Burritos are coming soon, actually.
Yeah, I know.
Burritos are coming soon. Yeah, you should be here.
You want some announcements?
Please.
All right. It's our final day of signups for Session 8 Sage groups. There's also Feel Good Friday today with Josh Kane at 10:30 a.m. on the community platform for supporting members. And Saturday's Q&A day. So supporting members of the Sage community platform can post your questions under the Questions for the Host tab in community chat, and we'll pull from there to answer tomorrow. And tune in for our interview on Sunday with Keshava Swami Maharaj. You won't want to miss it.
How does one become a supporting member and enter the Sage community platform?
You just go to wisdomofthesages.com and click join now.
Okay.
Join now.
That's it.
And what does it cost? $10,000, $9,000, Kastuba? What's the price of it?
I think the entering, what do they call that? The entry level is $5 a month.
$5 a month. Reasonable. That's what
Very
some people pay. That's less than a Netflix subscription.
Yeah.
Much less. That's like some cheap app.
And you get much more for it.
Yeah, you get a treasure trove of spiritual information.
Okay. Mara, this tea is a problem.
It's my saffron dopamine. Saffron's got a lot of dopamine, man. You just got to extract it with the heat and then consume it into the consciousness. It makes you quite happy.
Until the crash comes. Okay.
Do I crash? I was high all day. I'm still listening to these Prabhupada memories. Highly encouraging people to. If you want to have a good day, I was just mowing the lawn, listening to Shrutakirti. Oh my God, he's had so much nice time with Prabhupada.
Well, he was the personal secretary, or not the servant, the personal servant. Man, he did like all the massage him and take care of it, make sure all the little things are taken care of. Really intimate
Just
service.
you have to be like right by Prabhupada's side at all times.
Yeah.
And he was talking about this morning when on my treadmill this morning. He was talking about how when Prabhupada on the plane, he said when Prabhupada would go on the plane, it would almost be like, you act a certain way around your children. And then when you're away from your children, you just sort of act a different way. It's like Prabhupada acted different when he had no disciples around. And so on the plane, he just did his own thing. When the stewardess said the airline attendant said you got to sit down, Prabhupada would stand up. He would just sort of like no one was going to tell Prabhupada what to do on that plane. He'd talk to everybody. He'd engage with people. He always liked to look like a Vaishnav. He said, he'd go to the bathroom, make sure his tilak was on nicely. He'd make sure he'd leave the plane with a nice garland that the devotees had given him. But he also said something really, really that stuck out in my head that was very sanguine and very like important for me today to hear.
Okay.
He said, in 1975, he was married and his wife just had a baby and he was living in Hawaii. And when they got to Hawaii with Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, I think I want to just stay with my family now.
Mm-hmm.
And Prabhupada said, he said, I want to preach. He said, well, my preaching's not good.
Prabhupada
He
said
said,
to
no.
him,
Yeah, Prabhupada said that.
this ain't enough for you?
He says, yeah, my preaching. And so then he said, well, he said, no, Prabhupada was understanding. And so he stayed with his family. He goes, and then, of course, 2 years later, Prabhupada left the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And Shruti Kirti was like, we never had any idea that
he would go.
Prabhupada was going to leave the planet. You don't think like, well, you're not thinking like that. And this time that we get with devotees who we look up to, that have inspired us, that is so precious because devotees also leave this world and then they're only held in this world by sound. So now we want to hang out with Prabhupada, we hear it by sound only. We hear those instructions. We get to associate with them on YouTube or in our mind, in our memories, in a photograph. But that valuable time together, it's so precious. It's so precious coming together with the devotees and appreciating what we have now. And it was sort of like a wake up call for me with all the people that I cherish in my life, and to not take it for granted. Oh, you can see this person another day. He'll be around. No, may not be.
All right, Raghunath. Very nice.
Thank you. You approve of that? I'm stupid. I approve of this message by Raghunath. There's other ones I don't approve of, but this one I do approve of.
Okay.
All right, what do we got for a nugget?
We got a nugget from R.D. Laing.
R.D. Laing. Okay.
I think it's pronounced Lane, but I'm really not sure. The G at the end may be silent. Have you heard of him before?
No, I don't think so.
He was a Scottish psychiatrist who wrote extensively on mental illness, in particular psychosis and schizophrenia.
Oh, God.
And his views on the causes and treatment of psychopathological phenomenon were influenced by his study of existential philosophy and ran counter to the chemical and electroshock methods that had become psychiatric orthodoxy.
He was against that?
Well, apparently, yeah.
Electroshock, imagine that.
I mean, that was the thing.
You have some mental illness, or they're just like, you know what, we're just going to shock.
And the chemical thing is a big thing now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they used to lobotomize people.
Okay. That's
it's a whole thing. We're just going to take out a piece of the brain.
But it says that, again, that his views were, what did it say? Influenced by a study of existential philosophy. Clearly, you hear some Eastern philosophy blended into things he's saying, particularly in the quote that we're going to read today.
It's almost like we're still clueless about it. About dealing with this type of mental illness, the Western medicine.
It's
That's me
challenging,
making
Krishna.
my statement. It's incredibly incredible. Raghunath has spoken.
Okay, we're clueless.
Me being a part-time psychologist and psychiatrist.
Or at least
Not even quite sure
you'd
the
make a
difference
great
between
patient
the
in
two
any
words.
case. Great study. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Here's what he says.
Yeah.
True sanity entails in one or another the
One way or another.
dissolution in one way or another, the dissolution of the normal ego, that false self competently adjusted to our alienated social reality. Let me just read that part again.
Okay.
True sanity entails in one way or another the dissolution of the normal ego, that false self of competently adjusted.
That false self competently adjusted to our alienated social reality. We have a false conception of the self that has been adjusted to our alienated social reality. The circumstances that we're in right now, we've got a false conception of who we are in relation to this
Okay.
so-called reality that we're in.
Okay. And through this death and rebirth and the eventual reestablishment of a new kind of ego functioning, the ego now being the servant of the divine, no longer is its betrayer. That's pretty amazing.
I mean, that's pretty much the whole thing right there.
That's the whole thing. It's almost like Hare Krishna, R.D. Laing.
Yeah.
It's almost like, what version of the Upanishads did you read to come up with this?
Yeah, or
You know,
Bhagavad-gita.
when he speaks like this, it must be like, wow, that's sort of mind blowing. Yeah, this is like what the Upanishads have been talking about for millennia.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes to be normal in this crazy world is quite abnormal.
Well, that's definitely one way to look at it. I think it was Krishnamurti that had that statement like that, right? To be well adjusted to a I forget how he characterized the world, but if we're well adjusted to this world, we've got issues, more or less. I forget the exact, maybe someone knows that statement. But
Right.
yeah, here he's saying that, okay, what is true sanity? Not just sanity in terms of here we go. Thank you, Achyuta. To be well adjusted to profoundly sick society is no measure of health.
I think Achyuta's shooting for Mara's job. What do you think about that?
I don't know. But
Achyuta. He's right on the ball. Every time we have what that? Achyuta's like, yeah, got it. It's like, Mara doesn't have time to put down her knitting needles.
Achyuta can have my job.
Achyuta, can you make a good vegan meatball for me?
But okay, so true sanity entails, in one way or another, somehow, it may be this yogic method, it may be that yogic method, right? The dissolution of the normal ego, what Srila Prabhupada called the false ego. This is, just a very common idea that you'll find throughout Vedanta, right? That this false conception of who we are has to dissolve, right? Through some method or another, it's got to dissolve. That's what yoga is all about, getting past the false conception of who we are. Now, what he says is so interesting. It's almost like he's reading Prabhupada's books, where he says that, what's presented most widely in the Western world as Vedanta is Advaita Vedanta, is the idea that once you dissolve that false ego, there's no individuality left. You don't exist as an individual anymore. You realize that you are just everything, that there is no me and you. Even this whole world was an illusion, and there just is this divine light that you are. He says it in a very different way. He says what's consistent with Bhakti Vedanta, right? That once that the false conception of the self dissolves, then he says a new kind of ego functioning arises, or let's say is revealed. In one sense, to say new is misleading. It's like the original, right? We would say it's the original ego underneath it all. The original identity is revealed, and that ego is now the servant of the divine. You realize, oh, I was a servant of the divine, no longer its betrayer. Right there is like a hint or a clue to the entire reason why we're locked into this virtual reality, right? With all these false ideas, it's a betrayal. Somehow we betrayed that source that is our, well, the Bhagavad-gita is going to say this very best friend of the living entity,
Yeah.
turned away from.
In desperation meets just like ignorance. We desperately reach out for anything to give me an idea of self. Anything. I'll take anything. It's like the guys with beards. We're into the guys. We're like into having beards, or we're into like New York, or we're into like New England, or we're into like a baseball team, the Patriots or the Boston Red Sox or whatever. We're trying to find identity desperately, something to latch onto, some tribe to find sense of self.
It's all the political stuff too.
Politics is a huge one. And sometimes I'll go to different political on both sides just to hear the comments, and they're just like anything to hate the other side and to give yourself identity,
bolster one's own sense of identity.
Yeah, it's like, can't we say like, actually, they have one good point here? Does it have to be, I have to vote for everything that every Democrat believes in, and once I've signed up for Republican, I have to believe everything there? Can't there be like, can't they have two good things and we have three good things? Why does it? But it's desperate for an identity. And when the identity shifts, people lose their mind. I had a situation once when I was in shelter. And shelter was getting bigger, and we were on MTV in Europe. Does anybody remember MTV? It was like, so MTV Europe. It was not even MTV America. It was a whole different thing. But I knew this guy from MTV, and he showed up at some big snowboarding event we did in the Alps, and I was like, "Hey, the guy from MTV is here," and he came up to me. We started talking, and he goes, and I said, "How's MTV going?" And he goes, "They fired me." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. What are you doing now?" He goes, "They cannot fire me." It was like he lost. I could have sworn this guy lost his mind. "My people will not stand for it. I am blah, blah, blah," whatever his name was, from MTV. "And if they think they can fire me, my people will not stand for it. My people will." And I was thinking to myself, "Oh, you
don't have any people.
You don't have any people. You're so disposable. Don't you understand? They will just take you and let you go and hire someone newer and younger and fresher. And his whole identity was cemented.
And you're going to be crushed if you identify with that role, because it's about to be separated from you."
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I've seen this in spiritual circles too, like one adopts the false identity of, let's say, a renunciate, right?
Yeah.
But then they have trouble living that life. And then when it gets taken from them, well, this is how I'm known, as the monk, and now you take that away from me. It's like I'm naked here, I got to hide.
And that's why sometimes if there's a monk, like a swami, that just can't pull off following those vows, it's just like, I don't even want to be around these people anymore. But it's not like I want to, okay, I'm going to, it's sometimes like if I'm biking and I've been biking a lot lately. So if I'm biking really fast, and if I can't bike that fast and I can't keep my pace I want to keep, I'll just go a little slower. But I don't say, "I'm just getting off the bike now." But sometimes we're so in that concept of self, like I am a renunciate. Then if I can't do it, I just like, no, I don't want to play at all. I want to go back to being something. It's like you become humiliated.
Embarrassing, or
it's embarrassing. So yeah, it's like we are not, and Lord Chaitanya says this, we're not the renunciate. We're not the sannyasi. We're not the swami. We're not the guru. We're not the grihasta. We are the servant. We're the tiny spiritual being. We're not the Republican or Democrat. We're not the New England Patriot fan. We're not all these secondary identities, to the degree that we extend our real self to be that. It's not going to make us happy. You find some temporary pleasure in your, people do it with their gender preference. I'm gay, well, this is what I am, and I'm LGBTQ, and I'm the only thing that's actually going to make you happy is I'm a pure spirit soul, and I'm here to serve something bigger. You can have some little mini tribe. I like motorcycles. That's like a mini motorcycle tribe. You like riding bicycles. I like riding bicycles. I love the Northeast. It's beautiful here. You know what I mean? But it's sort of like you can have a mini.
Where are you going?
I'm just saying you can have a mini tribe that you belong to. It's a temporary tribe. You might have to move locations, or you might have to change the club you're in, or all those temporary identities that we play those roles. Hey, parents do it when their kids move out of the house. Some parents don't want their kids to move out of the house, and they'll lose their mind when their kids go off, and they have to refine, like, who am I now in relationship with my wife and a household when my kids have grown up, and they go through this identity crisis, the empty nest syndrome, Kostuba. Right. You're like, you've been an empty nest your whole life. You just
never had a nest.
You never laid any eggs.
There's no eggs in my nest.
Never laid any. Come over here. We'll lay some eggs for you.
That's okay. Oh, Raghunath. All right.
I could see you.
So as we read today in Bhagavatam, it's going to talk about like these subtle yogic paths of the dissolution of the ego. And I think as we go through, we can kind of consider, how is my false ego dissolving, at least gradually, right? Am I moving in that right direction? How am I aiding that process? How am I facilitating the process of the dissolution of my false conception of self? And, how will that true self arise underneath it?
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Ready?
Yeah.
Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat. Before he said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord, Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu badreshu nicham bhagavat sevaya bhagavatutam shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gyana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmadatamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 15, Text 52.
Yeah. So we're hearing a comparative study of the Pravrti Marg, the path of trying to find happiness through material prosperity and gain, compared with the Nivritti Marg, the path where you let go of all of you let go of even the idea that I'm going to find my happiness through material gain. And yesterday we're hearing about the path of material gain, and it was said that even if you do it so expertly that you ride through your rituals, through the sacrifices that they would do, that one could rise up to higher planets and enjoy on levels that are unimaginable to us. But then it pointed out, but you know what? Woven into that, is the come down.
You got to come down.
That's the nature of the material energy, that it goes up and down, that the force of time strips from it. It's
can't stay high.
You can't
stay high in the heavens.
Time has that effect that whatever it is that you have, if it's material, you won't have it at a certain point.
Yeah, let's face it. Even in this world, we see like even cultures. They've flourished. They've been successful. They have power. They have culture and education, and then they get crushed by another Another army comes through, another a nation tribe comes through, another kingdom comes through and crushes their kingdom. Rome gets crushed. The Ottoman Empire gets crushed.
Yeah.
Once you think you're riding high, and you just eventually get crushed.
There's no doubt, right? And so that
you come down.
yeah, so yeah, that's the message that this should be. What do we used to have? What do we call those? We had them numbered different.
Postulate 48.
Yeah, this could be a postulate number 48. That letdown is woven into the path of material enjoyment. It's inescapable. Okay, then what's the alternative? Now we're going to read about that today.
Stay high forever.
With that T. Mara, I'm serious, actually. This is really a problem. Okay. We can't allow this anymore. Don't make that T. If you don't make it, he's not going to make it. Right? So,
I've never made it.
So,
Stay
the power lies in your hands, Mara. Maybe after the show. Fine.
He likes me a little happy pappy.
After the show, it's okay. All right.
A twice-born Brahmana, a Dvija,
Yeah.
gains his life by the grace of his parents through the process of purification known as Garbhadan.
Okay.
Right?
So it's saying that it's talking about these Vedic rituals, and it's saying there's a Vedic ritual to call you into the certain family so that a certain soul will be born in a certain womb.
Garbhadan is the womb.
The womb, yeah.
Like what's that yoga pose? Garbha Pindasana.
Pindasana.
Garbha Pinda.
Yeah.
So this Garbhadan samskara, it's a practice of purification to draw you do it before you have a baby. A lot of times we don't even plan babies. People just like, oh, we got pregnant.
It happens.
Surprise. Yeah, you were a surprise. Thanks for that, Mom. Thanks for that, letting me know that I was a surprise. You were God's little unexpected surprise. We weren't planning you. Then they try to make it nice. God just sent you. Well, there's supposed to be like a focus when you want a baby. You focus. The Garbhadan is the rituals to call a soul into the womb. Isn't that incredible? It's such an interesting way, and the consciousness is very high for the man and the woman. It attracts a certain soul.
And then, so that's the beginning of life. What about the end of life? Next sentence.
There are also other processes of purification until the end of life, aka the death doula. When the funeral ceremony, that's called the Antyesti Kriya, is performed.
Ending purification.
I wonder what that is.
Well, it involves the burning of the body generally.
I think there's something like the crushing of the skull.
Okay.
I'm serious.
At the end, after the burning?
During the burning, you crush the skull.
Crush the skull.
And it's something like,
now there's no taking shelter of this body anymore or something.
Yeah, because it's also purifying for those attached to the body. Because you're like, this person is not there.
Yeah.
They're not there anymore.
Right. Now, in the previous verse, we were hearing about how all of these, they're called samskaras or yagnas, these different sacrifices, these different rituals, these different rites of passage in life.
Yeah.
How, especially we're hearing about the different sacrifices or rituals, how one could open up these ancient Vedic texts and say, oh, look, you can perform these rituals for the purpose of increasing one's material enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
But then it says you're going to have to come back down. Now in this verse, it's saying that there's rituals for birth, there's rituals throughout life, all the way up until death. But a qualified person, a person that's seeing clearly, recognizes that I'm not going to use these for material enjoyment. There's a higher purpose for them. They do have an effect on the psyche, right? This is such an interesting thing about this Vedic culture. Is every society has its rituals, right? It has its rites of passage in life. It's got its birth ceremonies and its coming of age ceremonies and its
bar mitzvah,
marriage ceremonies, and its ultimately its death ceremonies.
Yeah.
In our culture, we'll call it like a wedding ceremony.
Right.
And there are rituals built into it that we don't even know why we do it anymore.
No.
Why shouldn't the husband?
Why are we throwing rice?
Why are we throwing rice?
Why are we
Why
throwing
shouldn't the
rice?
husband
Why not
see
quinoa? Throw quinoa.
Why
Like,
shouldn't
right?
the husband, the groom see the bride before the marriage? This, that, so many things are there.
Why
We
are they
don't know
wearing
why.
white? Why is he wearing a tuxedo?
Right,
Why is she
why-
wearing
yeah.
white? What's the garter about? I still don't get that.
Oh,
Where's
God.
the garter come in?
So, but the point is, I don't know about the garter, but all of these, you know, they
Catch the
originally have
bouquet over your head. Like, where did that come from?
they originally have a purpose that has to do with the impression that they leave in the mind, right? That's how ritual is designed. It's meant to make a shift, make an impression in your mind. That's the purpose of it.
Mara, can you research throwing the bouquet of flowers of the bride over the head? See where that came from. Let's get to the bottom of this.
But in this Vedic culture, they were so attuned to this. They were so they so well understood what they were doing and designed it so well that they called the rituals samskars, which literally means mental impression. So like as we would say, okay, now we're going to perform the wedding ceremony, they would literally be saying, now we're going to perform the wedding mental impression, right? The death mental impression. It's like we're all meant to be changed by this. Our minds are meant to be shaped by this. Let us be shaped by this in a way that is going to be positive and lead towards the dissolution of our false ego and the arising of the true self.
You know, you could call it like an anchor too. Sometimes you might, your parents treated you a certain way, and they fed you. And every time you taste that food as you get older, it reminds you of home. It reminds you of love. It reminds you. So you put these impressions in the consciousness. When we start to drift away from, like, suppose your marriage is getting tough, but you have this samskara to drag you back of why you were doing and the commitments you made and some higher principle there. And it anchors us back to Dharma, basically.
Yeah, those anchors, you say anchors. Yesterday we were talking about them as, what was the word that we used? Limiting principles on one's materialistic drives.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Mara, do you got any information? We're dying to find out about the throwing the bouquet over the head.
At least Raghunath is.
Kostuba's on the edge of his seat here.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Well, I got some varying things according to Sri Google G.
What was the question about the veil?
No, about
that's
throwing the
interesting, too.
bouquet.
Throwing the bouquet.
Oh, yeah.
Some say it started in England in the 1800s. Others trace it back farther, but it's created to bestow luck upon the guests. So single women were desperate to catch the bouquet, as marriage was the only way to bring a woman and her family out of poverty.
Huh.
So the single women would all like elbow their way out of each other.
This has nothing to do with romance or anything. This is just like
they say
pure
it was
economic.
Desperate single women.
It was seen more as a necessity than a romantic act. Over the years, it's now evolved into a fun way for the bride.
Okay. Well, Road Rage on the message board says rice, an ancient nuptial tradition that acts as a blessing for fertility and prosperity. He also says the wedding bouquet toss is a tradition that dates back to the 1300s in England. The bride tosses her bouquet to unmarried women during the wedding reception, and whoever catches it is said to be the next in line to be wed.
That we know.
That. Road Rage, if you're trying to get Mara's job, you got to do better than that. We knew that coming into
Captain
this.
Obvious over here.
And you better have a good vegan meatball up your sleeve. Okay.
He's got some pretty good memes and things up his sleeve that I get.
Okay, he's saying it's symbolic for fertility and good luck. We'll take that.
Okay.
Generally, the idea of good luck is often tied to these to get you to do them. You know.
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, let's set that aside now. Let's get back to where we were, Raghunath.
53.
No, we're still in 52.
Oh, yeah. So I'm sorry. We're in the.
So now we've heard that twice-born brahmanas, that you're born in a particular family of brahmanas, of like people that are pursuing truth in life as the high, you know, as you've made that their principle. And why? What role will these rituals play in their life? Let us continue with 52.
Thus, in due course, a qualified Brahmin becomes uninterested in materialistic activities and sacrifices, but he offers the sensual sacrifices in full knowledge into the working senses, which are illuminated by the fire of knowledge. So he's still doing the work, but he's doing it in full
Well, not
knowledge.
necessarily. I think not
You
necessarily.
didn't get that? That's what
Well,
I got from it.
I think what it's saying is when the senses are illuminated by knowledge, in other words, our senses are generally pulling us in this way or that way, in ignorance, right? In Vedanta, in this Vedic philosophy, knowledge and renunciation, like the two words jnana, which means knowledge, and vairagya, which means renunciation or detachment, they're so close. These two concepts are so closely associated together that commonly, like, the two words are made like one compound, jnana vairagya, right? Jnana vairagya, which means the idea is that when you actually see things for what they truly are, when you know, then you naturally let go, right? When I know that the objects of the senses don't grant lasting satisfaction, then I let go. And so, in a sense, when you say the senses are illuminated with knowledge, we mean that when my knowing is so complete, when my jnana is so deep, that my senses are no longer pulling me, then we could say my senses have been illuminated by knowledge. They're no longer pulling me to the objects of the senses with their false promise of fulfillment. Or we could say, like, that limiting principle has been, that these sacrifices, these ritual sacrifices, they are these limiting principles that are helping us keep our life straight, right? I'm going to get married. I'm going to perform this ceremony. I'm going to limit my drives for sexuality to one person. It's a limiting principle. And all these rituals kind of have their purpose in that, kind of keeping us, narrowing our path, keeping it going straight, But when our senses are illuminated with knowledge, then in one sense we don't need them anymore. We can let go of all the rituals and so on. We can dissolve that once that knowledge is hot enough. It burns away the need to perform these rituals. Prabhupada writes here, in the commentary, he says those interested in materialistic activities remain in the cycle of birth and death. That's the pravriti marg, right? The path of material enjoyment. Pravriti marga, or the inclination to stay in the material world to enjoy varieties of sense gratification, has been explained in the previous verse. That was talking about going to the heavenly planets and doing all the rituals and so on. Now in this verse, it is explained that one who has perfect Brahminical knowledge rejects the process of elevation to higher planets and accepts Nivriti Marga. In other words, he prepares himself to go back home, back to Godhead, right? I'm not interested in the enjoyments of this world. I'm interested in what's beyond that, or in one sense, what's beneath that. I'm no longer interested in my false conception of the self. I want to burn that in the fire of knowledge. I want to burn my materialistic drives in the fire of knowledge. And then these rituals, I can let them go to the next stage of refinement. And Prabhupada writes, he says, this is a little difficult to understand, but it is very easy if one takes to Krishna consciousness seriously and tries to understand Krishna. And we can get back to that point, but there's like this idea that, at the end of the Bhagavad-gita, the Bhagavad-gita is largely a comparative study of different religious or yogic practices.
Yeah.
But in the end, Krishna says, abandon all those religions, abandon all those yogas, and do one thing. Surrender unto me. Sarva dharmam parityaja. You abandon all the different religions, all the different rituals, all the different sacrifices, and do one sacrifice. Just give yourself to me. Take shelter of that root of existence, and everything's taken care of. So that Krishna factor is like a very important factor. We're going to hear about a very subtle yogic process of dissolving the ego in these following verses. But Prabhupada's saying it can be done in a very simple way if you just give yourself to Krishna.
I wonder if we could talk to a Sanskrit pundit and find a better way to say surrender. Because yesterday we were talking about surrender sounds like a SWAT team has caught me, and they just got put your hands up, face on the ground, good on your knees.
Well, there's
don't
another way to
reach
think
for
of
anything.
There's another way to think of surrender also, though. Like sometimes in the context of romance,
Sweet surrender.
sweet surrender. That one,
Sweet
or yeah,
song, isn't it?
oh, is that John Denver too, right?
No,
Yeah, it was John Denver.
no,
Sweet
it's
surrender.
like some old 70s song.
Well, John Denver was in the 70s.
Oh yeah,
But-
John Denver and Sarah McLachlan.
John Denver.
No, it's I didn't even know her name, but
Oh,
I
that-
know nothing was
that's
gonna be the
Frankie Valli in the Four
sweet
Seasons.
surrender. What a night!
Yeah.
That was Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
That's so damn old.
But in any case, let's set that aside for now.
Commit. That's not a bad word.
But in other words, there is part of the surrender is like this mood, right? This idea. I've tried the Pravriti Marg lifetime after lifetime.
Right.
I've tried to enjoy the things of this world, turning my back on you, resisting you. Now I surrender to you, right? The sweet surrender is
I
the
still
idea.
think we should rename it.
You know, you need to talk to Tukaram about that, because he once gave a thorough argument defending the militaristic tones of
Surrender.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Talk to Tukaram about
I don't see Krishna as someone I want to like surrender to. I see him as one I want to love.
No, well, again, surrender could be understood in love.
I
but
guess
also,
because we use the word surrender like,
well, no, his point
the
was the
human
way that
trafficker surrendered to authorities today. I don't want to look at myself as some criminal.
we
who
understand
surrendered.
that, Raghunath. We understand that.
You know,
Now, I'm saying to balance that out, you might want to hear from Tukaram.
who says you are a criminal and you
Yeah,
have
it's
to
kinda-
surrender your
yeah.
criminal tendencies of being self-centered. All right,
All
let me
right.
hear this.
Okay, so now let's hear more about this. So far, what's happened is he's saying that all the rituals that I performed got burned up in the fire of the illuminated senses. Once the senses were hot with knowledge, they were no longer being pulled towards materialistic sense gratification. I was able, and the rituals that I do dissolved into that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're no longer necessary. They dissolve it. Now he's going to go through levels of dissolution, one after the other.
Band name. We're levels of dissolution.
That's
Text
pretty
53.
good. That's pretty good.
It's sort of like a prog rock band.
or like one of those kind of weird kind of metal rap band kind of things that are around.
Yo, levels of dissolution in the house.
Now, what's that really big band that has a name that's like that from Long Island? I think they're from,
Levels of
I forget.
I don't know. The mind is always agitated by the waves of acceptance and rejection. Acceptance and rejection.
Mhm.
Therefore, all the activities of the senses should be offered into the mind, which should be offered into one's words. Then one's words should be offered into the aggregate of all alphabets, which should be offered into the concise form Omkar. Omkar should be offered into the point Bindu.
Bindu.
Bindu is like a drop, right? Bindu into the vibration of sound, and that vibration into the life air. Then the living entity, who is all that remains, should be placed in Brahman, the supreme. This is the process of sacrifice. I didn't get that. If I was reading this myself, I'd be like, next.
That's see, Raghunath, that's where you have to dig in. That's where you have to.
Or dig around. I dig around. You hit a stone, you're like, I'm going around this stone.
I can't say that I fully understand this, but
I gave a Scooby-Doo like,
I think I got something from it. The idea is that once something becomes unnecessary, it dissolves into the next stage. And once that's unnecessary, it dissolves into the next stage. And you're going to keep dissolving until all that's left is the self, Brahman, spirit. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit. And then we recognize that spirit in relation to the supreme. That becomes the sacrifice. In other words, the Vedas speak about all the sacrifice, which is doing these rituals, throwing the ghee and the grain into the fire to achieve some materialistic purpose, a pious materialistic purpose. This is saying, take that idea of that ritual, and this is going to become our sacrifice. We're going to burn one thing after the other. We're not talking about this external sacrifice. What we're talking about is an internal levels of offering one thing into the next, offering one thing into the next, until there's nothing left but the self. So it's kind of like a metaphor in that sense when it says this is the process of sacrifice. But the idea is we let go of the ritual because the senses were now no longer demanding the things of this world. I didn't have to restrain them through ritual, right? You understand? Ritual is a way to engage the senses in a positive way because they want to run wild.
Right.
But once they were illuminated by knowledge, and with knowledge, the renunciation, the letting go, then I offered the ritual into the senses. It burned up because the senses were hot now, right? So, okay, fine. Then it says you offer the senses, you let go of the senses into the mind. When you get that mind fully illumined with knowledge, now you've let go of the senses, and now you're no longer pursuing the things of this world through the senses at all. You've got this internal subtle sacrifice going on. And then, so you've let go of the senses, you have offered to the mind. And now you've let go of the mind and offered it into sound or into speech. That's parts, I think we need a real Vedic scholar to dig into that more. But where it leads to is it goes to mantra, right? It says that now you're offering sound or speech into the mantra, into Om, right? So it's like I've let go of my ritual, I've let go of my senses, I've let go of my material mind programming, and now I'm just absorbed in mantra, Om, right? And then even the mantra is kind of like deconstructed because, when it says bindu, the Om has that little dot. Right, which is the bindu. So it's kind of like you compress or you dissolve the Om down to this one point. And then that's offered into Brahman, right? That's offered till there's nothing left but spirit, right? And then you exist there as your true self without all the external coverings. You boiled it down to finer and finer levels of existence. And then it's just you and the super soul are there. And without any, now that's one level of, that's one path of dissolution that we just watched, or you can say refinement or distillation of boiling down.
Yeah.
Now that's going to be described in another way in text 45. Or I'm sorry, 54.
54. Okay. This might be the last one here. On this path of ascent, the progressive living entity enters the different worlds of fire, the sun, the day, the end of the day, the bright fortnight. That's when the moon is getting bigger. The full moon, the passing of the sun in the north, along with their presiding demigods. When he enters Brahmaloka, he enjoys life for many millions of years. And finally, his material designation comes to an end, even after 1,000,000 years.
Sure.
He then comes to a subtle designation from which he attains the causal designation, witnessing all previous states. Upon the annihilation of this causal state, he attains his pure state, in which he identifies with the supersoul. In this way, the living entity becomes transcendental. That's a whole thing.
Yeah. So it's.
I don't know if we have time to even explain this.
Oh, Raghunath, just stay with us, okay? You see, now you're on the T. You're coming down from the T now.
I'm not. That's just like a big, thick thing. That's a whole class down. Right there.
You're coming down.
This is where I sort of like, next, what's the next one?
Well, let's just share this. That it's saying that you attain the worlds of fire, the sun, the day, the end of the day. And I looked at a commentary on this, and what it was saying was one attains the deities, the deity of fire, the deity of the sun, the deity of the day, the deity of the end of the day. They're deities, gods and goddesses for each of these. When it says, so it's saying you're attaining one after the other, you're going up levels in the universe. When it says that you've attained the deity, I don't know if that means you become the deity, like you
With it?
become the sun god and then you become the,
Oh, you.
or if it means that you're accepted by that deity to exist on that plane,
Hmm.
but you're rising up through the levels of the universe, one step at a time, until you, and at each level you get a body that's more subtle than the one that you had before. And eventually you give up the gross body entirely and you attain the causal body, which is the subtle body. I like that. And it says you witness the previous stages. You really, okay, look how far I've come. I used to have this gross earthly body, and I went up to more subtle and subtle, refined platforms of material existence until I just existed in the form of the subtle body, the mind. And then I let go of that, and the true self was underneath. And as to come full circle, R.D. Laing was saying that's the true ego, and you find out that ego, that self, is the servant of the divine, no longer the betrayer. Now it's you and the super soul, and you're on the same page. It's together. So in any case, we all are on a path of bhakti yoga, and maybe not in these very technical, subtle, yogic process of dissolution. We may not be going through these stages exactly, but our process is sarvadharma prityaja. We give ourselves entirely to Krishna, and that and through the chanting of the name and the hearing of the Bhagavatam, etc., the false ego will dissolve. We'll understand. It's kind of jumping right to the point. You are the servant of the divine all along, the loving servant of the divine, and the divine loves you. And you could it's kind of like an elevator kind of approach. You kind of bypass these subtle stages of refinement and kind of shoot right towards the goal of it all.
How many people who practice yoga or went to a yoga teacher training know any of this stuff? You know what I mean? This is like, this is all real stuff. This is
It's
what
real
yogis
stuff.
understand.
Yeah.
And never taught. It's never taught.
Yeah. And in one sense, because if you can't practice it, how can you teach it? And how many people can, in this day and age, how many people can teach? Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's the Yuga avatar, the avatar that establishes the Yuga Dharma, he says the Yuga Dharma is Sankirtan, it's Kirtan, it's
Let's keep
glorifying
this
Krishna.
simple. Let's keep this simple, people. It's Kali Yuga. You can't do anything well. We're going to
You
sing.
can't
We're
do
going to
anything
sing.
well.
We're going to dance. This is going to be our
Be a
method
little
of self-realization. Let's all sing together.
You ready for some takeaways?
And sometimes we
Take it
can't
away.
do that. Hey, Mara, how are you?
Good. How are you, Prabhu?
Oh, someone got it.
I
Jimmy
really
James
think
got
you
it.
should. Huh?
Vision of Disorder. That was the band that I
that was.
sang.
And what was your
Well,
band name?
you said it. Levels of
Dissolution and opening for Vision of Disorder today. Mara, you gotta sell this tea, man. This saffron dopamine dump. There's no caffeine. It's just like enlightening my senses.
No, you're about to get grumpy. I feel it coming on.
I feel a sense of enlightenment here. You're a
You
genius.
seem enlightened.
I think we stole the idea from Amarananda, but
Yeah. Amarananda was going on and on about the health benefits of saffron.
Well, you know what devotees, sometimes you meet devotees in India or from Iran or from some Middle East, and they're like, here, I brought you some saffron from the Middle East. And they're like, oh, thanks.
Such good quality. And you can't.
But we
here.
don't cook with it that much saffron.
Right.
So we're like, we actually
It's a
have
subtle spice.
packs of saffron at home. So
Little tiny packs.
little tiny
You can make it a
packs,
ton.
millions of packs.
Yeah, because it
not
goes a long
crates.
way.
Yeah.
Alita Kishore says Dubai has the best, cheapest saffron. Well, guess what? Instead of
say
making saffron
Spanish.
sweet rice, Amarananda gave us this inspiration for tea, and Mara's perfected it with maple syrup and ginger, and so good.
There's something in there. I don't know if it's a saffron mara, but it's a little dangerous.
It makes me feel so happy.
Okay, quiz for you, Mr. Botanist. What is saffron?
Saffron is the stamen of a particular of a crocus.
Crocus. You nailed it right now. I think we
Thank
talked about that on the show before, maybe something like that. You said that with such confidence. Excellent.
All right. Our time with inspiring devotees is precious and limited.
Oh yeah,
Very
it's
precious.
precious. It's keep it precious.
Oh, I could make the drink for everybody.
Oh
Clifford
yeah,
Dean, who's
Clifford
coming
Dean
this
wants some
weekend.
drink. Okay, Let's make some of that magic drink, Mara.
I can do that. Dissolve the false ego and be a servant of the divine.
Clifford Dean's coming to the farm, first time.
And that's exciting.
What was
Wow,
that again?
Clifford
Can you read
Dean.
that? Clifford Dean. So he was always mysterious, right? We called him.
Yeah.
What was his
I
nickname?
don't think he ever left his room.
Yeah, we thought he never. Yeah, we were calling Prison Break or something. I can't remember. like sometime when you see him in a car, you're like, oh, he must be escaping. I thought he just sat at that desk. Okay.
All right. To the degree that we identify with our temporary roles, we suffer.
You just won't actually be I mean, you can. We all do. But you have to really understand it's not really going to make me happy. That's what I want to clarify. That doesn't mean we might not fall into a temporary role. I'm a dad. But you should understand that's not my eternal resting place. So don't try to derive your deep happiness. Expect your happiness to leave from that spot.
Okay.
Letdown is woven into the path of material enjoyment.
Yeah.
Including the path of certainties. You go up, Raghunath, you drink the tea, you go up, and then
you are like a reality
Downer.
check downer.
Just trying to represent the Vedic teachings here.
Burn your materialistic drive in the fire of knowledge.
Burn it up.
of knowledge. Metal.
Simplify and sweetly surrender.
Sweetness.
Sweet surrender, Raghunath.
Sweet. Wasn't that Aerosmith? Sweet Please. That was Sweet Emotion. Sweet Emotion.
Yeah.
Sweet emotion, yeah.
Offer it all up until only the self is left.
Offer it all up until the self is left.
Burn it off.
What does that mean?
And dig in, don't dig around.
Dig in and don't dig around. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Want to really thank all the supporting members. Really means a lot to us, to all the people. Join our Sage community platform. Become a supporting member. We really appreciate it. Any monthly donation you want for less than a cup of coffee, because cup of coffee has gone up in price. I don't know if you noticed that. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you get to enter into the behind the scenes, behind the curtains. The veil becomes lifted. The vault is opened. And join our secret society of Wisdom of the Sages.
It's not
Sage
secret.
community platform. Hey, Christopher, our old school Zoomer and raw Buddhist. I asked him what he was eating what he's been eating lately. Sort of checking up on his raw foodness, and he said, I'm scrolling back on the message board here. What did he say? Oh, here it is. Yesterday, I had rambutan fruits all day. What are rambutans? Those are like lychees?
They're these little reddish kind of like,
Yeah, like lychees.
they're kind of like lychees, but they're different. They
They're
look like a little COVID thing. You know, like they got like all these little
Hare Krishna.
spikes coming
Oh,
out
yeah,
of them.
they're like lychees. Rambutans, yeah. Then a papaya, banana, mango, jalapeno fruit salad. For dinner, that was just before dinner, followed by the jalapeno fruit salad was for dinner. That's pretty good. Let's put jalapeno in a fruit salad. And then he followed it with durian for dessert. Have you ever had durian, Stuba?
I don't think I have.
My favorite of all foods. I haven't had it in a long time. Have you tried it, Mary? Okay, next time we go to New York City, I'm getting you a durian. And you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. There's no
Sure I won't be in
sorta
between?
I sort of like durians.
All right.
If you don't like durians, you'll be like, get that away from me. It is so damn offensive or attractive.